Hi there, it's Sarah here again, the children's nutritionist. Now I'm going to be talking to you about commercial baby foods. They're incredibly popular. We know about 3/4 of babies have been exposed to these at some point during their weaning journey. However, I want to tell you a little bit more about them so you can make the right decision for your baby and your family circumstances. So they're certainly convenient. They're fantastic if you're short on time. You can just pop one in your weaning bag and off you go. They've also been really useful for some of my families when they've been going on holiday, or for example, I looked after a family who were having their kitchen remodeled and didn't have very many cooking facilities. But let me talk you through some of the pouches and puffs and pots and jars that we've got on the market at the moment. I want to start with breakfast cereals. So there are lots of baby porridges and baby cereals such as these on the market, which I think a lot of people do go for. Something like the Ella's one here is literally just oats, some other grains and some dried fruit. There's no vitamins or minerals or anything added to it, and it's actually very, very finely milled and processed. This one's slightly better because it does have some vitamins and minerals added to it, but to be frank, there's absolutely no need for your baby to have these at all. I much prefer traditional, simple porridge oats. Here we go, just some normal porridge oats, or if the texture's a little bit too chunky for your baby, something like Ready Brek is also fantastic. Ready Brek in particular because it's got iron added, which is one of the critical nutrients that babies need at the start of weaning. There's also nothing wrong with something as simple as Weetabix. With a bit of milk to dissolve it, this is fantastic. And again, fortified with iron and some of the B vitamins. So from what I see, there really isn't a role for baby porridges and baby cereals. Just go for the bog standard stuff, but please don't buy the sweetened ones that are aimed at older children. Your baby really doesn't need sugary stuff at the start of weaning. I'm going to talk to you now about pots and pouches and meals. So one of the things that you need to be aware of when you're buying ready meals for your baby is that they're quite often not all as they seem. A lot of them are very sweet. So for example, this one, which is carrot, apples and parsnips, actually contains 68% of apple, so it's more of a pudding type of thing rather than a main course. This one I think is particularly misleading because it's in a really nice dark green packaging. It is broccoli, pears and peas, but it's actually 79% pear, so very, very sweet indeed. And this one, another one that looks very savoury, like a nice meal, carrot, peas and kale. This one contains 30% water, so the nutrition is very, very dilute and your baby has to take more of it than if you were making the same food yourself in order just to get the same amount of nutrients. Some of the commercial baby foods as well tend to be really low in iron and protein, and that's because iron and protein rich foods are often meat or fish, and these are actually the most expensive ingredients that manufacturers use. So for example, this one here, which is a Heinz by Nature sweet potato, chicken and vegetables, contains just 12% chicken, and that's one of the highest ones I've seen. This one here, which is a beef-based dish, contains only 9% beef. And this one by Piccolo, which is a lamb ratatouille, is actually only 10% lamb. Now, in order to have the word chicken, beef or lamb in the title, there is a minimum legal requirement that manufacturers have to use. And these all meet this minimum requirement, but they're not high enough in order to meet your baby's nutritional requirements. And if you were to make similar dishes at home, you would be probably putting in about 25 to 30% of the meat or fish in that dish in order to make it a normal meal. When the word beef or chicken or fish isn't actually used in the ingredients or in the title of the food, so for example, this Hip Organic spaghetti bolognese, it's a beef-based bolognese, but actually because beef isn't named at all in the title of the dish, the legal requirement for how much beef is in there is much, much lower. This actually only contains 5% beef. Quite shocking really, isn't it? One of the other things to say about pouches is that when they're made, they're ultra heat treated, and that's necessary in terms of preserving the food. However, vitamin C in particular and some other vitamins aren't heat stable, and so that's practically eradicated in those foods. The other thing I've noticed is that some of the products that are marketed as being suitable for babies from 4 months actually contain foods like wheat or gluten and milk, which aren't supposed to be given to babies before 6 months. So really do look at the ingredients list and look at the nutritional information when you're making decisions about whether to have those or not. Another thing, they're actually relatively expensive. So if you were to make the same dish at home, it's going to be a lot cheaper. So just bear that in mind. I think I looked at a carrot based one and it would cost you 9p to make the same dish, but if you bought it in a pouch, it would cost you about £1. So just be aware of that as well. The other thing I'm not too keen about with the pouches and the jars is that the texture is very uniform, which means that if you were to buy one of the pouches at 1 month and then buy the same pouch again 3 months later, you're going to get exactly the same product. If you're making a puree at home and you choose to put it in your blender and whiz it for 10 seconds, you're going to get a slightly coarser texture than if you blended it for 30 seconds. And so when we're cooking at home, babies get exposed to a much greater range of textures, which is what we need. We need them to learn how to manage different textures in order to progress those eating skills to get them in a good place for when they're children. And the other thing about pouches is if you do use them, please don't let your baby suck from the pouch here, from the lid. When they do that, they're not being exposed to any of the sensory characteristics that are in that food. For example, they can't smell it. They can certainly taste it, but they can't see it. And actually, it's those things that babies need to learn in order to progress successfully through the stages of eating and drinking. They need to experience the sensory properties of food as part of their weaning journey. I hope that's been helpful. I'll be back soon to talk about other baby foods. Bye for now. So if you liked what you just saw and you'd like to find out more, you can download my free guide to my favourite baby weaning essentials. Just click on the link below.